guys, Sam here from WebContebo, and today we've got a really interesting new experiment that we're going to run. So this is a little different than what we normally do. Now, I'd say about a good 2 to 3 months ago, we did a project for a client, and it was converting a static site to a WordPress site. And without even really thinking, we completed the project, but we had added Divi as a back-end visual editor so that the content would be easier to edit. Because frankly, we just get so many projects lately that use visual builders. Is almost just kind of a natural instinct. Well, anyway, guy come to find out their company doesn't like using visual editors because they say they add bloat to the site, they make them load slower, less efficiently, whatever you want to call it. And so as a result, we ended up just redoing that site using only custom fields. It wasn't a big deal. Everybody ended up happy. But ever since then, I've kind of had this thought in my head. I wonder if these things really are adding a ton of bloat to sites. Which visual editors are worse as far as performance, and really just what the deal is with it. So we're going to run I don't know if you would call this a scientific experiment or what, but this is the best way I can think to do it. We're going to install a blank installation of WordPress on 3 different subdomains, and then we're going to use the big 3 visual editors. I call those Visual Composer, Divi, and Elementor. Now, there's some other ones that are popular like Beaver Builder, Page Builder, etc. But I really like those big 3, and most of the projects we get here involve one of those 3 visual editors. So that's the ones we're going to use today. And anyway, so we're going to install each subdomain is going to have one of those 3 visual editors on it, and then we're going to build the exact same page on each of those and then run them through some speed testers to see which one performs better. So basically all 3 with the same content but using a different page builder, and we're going to see if different page builders take more resources to load the same page. Are some slower, are some faster, are they all the same, are they all slow, are they all fast? We'll find out. So should be a pretty interesting experiment. Now we're just going to start out simple by throwing a background image on a page and seeing what happens, and then from there we'll kind of take a look at the results, and I think we'll have some multiple parts to this because I want to test some other things like how these perform with video backgrounds, animations, that kind of stuff. So this will probably end up being a multi-part series where we're going to continue to build on these sites a little bit more, keep running them through the grinder, and then really see once we have a full page done which one of these things performs the best. So should be interesting. Stay tuned and let's get going. Alright, thanks for sticking with me. So I've already got these all set up, and I've already ran the speed test too, but I haven't actually gone through the results much yet. So we'll get into that in a minute, but first I'm just going to show you quickly how I set these up. So basically we created 3 blank installations of WordPress, all using the WordPress installer on my server, and then we installed the same blank theme on all of these sites. Now let me go into the dashboard and I will show you. We use the blank slate theme. So this is pretty much a theme with very little stuff in it at all, just straight blank theme. It might add a little weight to the site itself, but I'm guessing probably not a whole lot, since the whole idea of it is just to be a blank theme. So on this site we've installed Divi theme, and on all 3 of these sites all we're doing is adding a image that is 800 pixels high for a background, so something like you would see in a normal header on any kind of site. So if we go in the media library, I believe this image size, you can see it here, same image on every site, and the image size is 233 kilobytes. So this is a JPEG. I sized it down myself to be 1800 by 2000, and saved it at like medium quality in Photoshop, and as a result we got a pretty small file size with 233 kilobytes. So same exact picture on every site. Then we just went into the sample page on all 3 of these sites, and with the different various builders we set the background up however you normally would set up a background section. So you can see we just popped it right in here, and then we added 400 pix padding on the top and bottom to make it 800 pixels high. And then as a result, you'll see that we get this nice cat background on the page. So that's pretty much it. Then we did the same thing on this site. This one is running Elementor here. You will notice, interestingly, that it looks a little bit different on each one. This is without doing any different customizations, the position of the background or anything like that. Then here, we'll go over here to Visual Composer, and you can see we've got that one right there. So these are our 3 sites, and basically, as you can see, they're all exactly the same. If you load them up on my server, they're pretty snappy overall. And let's hop right into the page speed results on all these. So I ran them through 3 different page speed testers. One would be GT Metrics, which gives you a lot of different info from several different page speed places. Then Google Page Speed Insights, which isn't really my favorite one, but it's really popular, so I figured I would just use that one anyway. And then Pingdom, which also gives you a ton of really good information on speed and page load and stuff like that. So as you can see, we've got 3 tests for each one of these, or 3 tests for each one of these places. So each site we've got tested on each one of these individually. So we're going to start with GT Metrics, and if you come over here, this is the first site we did with Divi, and as you can see, we've got a page speed score of 95%, Y-slow score of 90%, fully loaded time 1.4 seconds, total page size 386 kilobytes, and 13 requests. So if we look down here, pretty much everything we're doing well on, except optimizing the order of styles and scripts. And you can see the one they're pointing to is an Elegant Themes one, so that is part of the Divi theme. If we go in here to Y-slow, you'll see we're pretty much doing well on all of these. We are getting a B for external JavaScripts and style sheets. So that is definitely something to keep in mind. And then these, I don't think we really need to pay too much attention to those right now. So as you can see, this is overall a pretty good score. Now we'll go ahead and compare that to the Elementor results. This one scored a 96% on page speed, and you'll see that's 1 tick above the Divi one, but it scored an 85% on Y-slow, which is 5% below Y-slow for the Divi theme. So this is Elementor again that we're looking at here. Fully loaded time is actually 3 seconds less. Let's see, 339 kilobytes page size compared to 386, so that's pretty inconsequential. And you can see there's 20 requests on the page here, as opposed to 13 requests on this page here. If we go down here, we're actually scoring really well on all these things. Remove query strings from static resources. You can see some of these things are coming from the Elementor theme. So that is causing us to get a B there. And then for Y-slow, let's see, HTTP requests, it looks like we have them almost twice as many as we had on the Divi theme. So even though this page loads faster, it does get a little bit lower score on Y-slow. As you can see, it does load some more stuff here. And page speed, it scores a tick better. So that's pretty interesting. Now let's hop over to Visual Composer. This one actually gets a fully load time of 1 second. So on GT Metrics, Visual Composer gets the best overall score. Page speed score 97, Yahoo Slow score 93. That's compared to a 95.90 and a 96.85. So this scored the best in page speed and Y-slow. So that's definitely good, and you see we've got an A on every single item in here, so that's great. Y-slow, you can also see they scored really well here with no B's at all. Just content delivery network, which is not something that would not have anything to do with this, so we don't pay any attention to that. Fully loaded time 1 second, so that's slightly better than the other ones. Total page size 323, that's compared to 339 and 386. So total page size was also the smallest with this one, and 10 requests compared to 20 and 13. So it also had the lowest request. So as far as GT Metrics goes, all 3 of these were basically very similar. There's only a difference between the best and worst of 0.4 seconds, and As far as requests goes, it looks like Elementor had the most requests out of any of these. So just something interesting to note. Overall, I think these are pretty relatively inconsequential. I mean, if half a second is decent, but I mean, overall, it's not really too bad. So, so far, it looks like Visual Composer / WP Bakery is winning on that one. Now let's jump over to page speed. Here we've got page speed for Divi. This is for Divi, and we've got an 86 out of 100, which let's just take a look down here. Eliminate render blocking, JavaScript and CSS. Server response time, that doesn't have anything to do with the test. Minify CSS, minify JavaScript. So if we look here, these are coming from Divi, or actually this one is from Blank Slate, so we can ignore that. Server response time is my own server's fault. And let's see, these are WordPress. Okay, this is Divi. And this one is Divi. Okay, so we got 2 optimization suggestions on Divi there, and that, and then 1 there. So only 3 things really. Overall, not too bad. And let's see, if, 1.3 megabytes to load. That's interesting. Okay. Now let's jump over to Elementor. 89 out of 100, so that's pretty good. We can check in here on the optimization suggestions. Okay. There's Elementor. So these have quite a few more CSS that needs to be optimized. These are just WordPress core. If we see minify CSS, that's good there. Okay, so that one pretty much, I mean, you can definitely see there's a few more CSS files that need to be optimized, but overall that one gets a pretty good score. And we'll hop over here to Visual Composer, and this one gets an 89 out of 100. So again, we've got 86, 89, and 89. So Elementor and Visual Composer both scoring the same. Now if we look here, let's see, this is a Visual Composer. So they have 1 there, and that's it. So they only had 1 file really suggested here that could have been optimized more. So that's pretty good. Again, this one doesn't really give you that great of insight, so we'll just skip right to the next. But again, Visual Composer looks like it pretty much wins on this one. And both Visual Composer and Elementor scored at 89, although this one had more files that could have been optimized. So again, probably not a huge deal, but slight edge to Visual Composer on that one. Now here, Pingdom. We've got, this is the Divi version of Pingdom. Page size 428.9 kilobytes with 12 requests, load time 773 milliseconds, and a performance grade of 86. These are all tested from New York City. So down here, content size by content type, we got 25% almost coming from scripts, 20% coming from CSS. So that's interesting to keep in mind. And 50% from scripts, and 33% here with 6 script requests and 4 CSS requests. So if we look into query strings from static resources, we do see a couple Divi ones there. Let's just go down a little bit more. Front-end builder plugin, so that one's taking up some big weight. Overall, though, this is pretty small, and the biggest thing on this page is the cat hero, which is fairly small in itself. So this is a run-in pretty smoothly. Let's compare it to, now it's got a 27. Let's compare that to Elementor, which got a 16. You can see this one does have more query strings in the static resources. Again, probably not something I would normally even pay that much attention to, but just something to keep in mind. So here we've got script is slightly higher, CSS, let's see, I think that one is, Yep, CSS is quite a bit lower. Now here we got 6 and 4 for requests compared to 9 and 8, so almost twice as many CSS requests. That's interesting. Now that's another interesting thing. This one is calling Google Fonts API, and even though we didn't set up any Google Fonts yet, whereas this one is not. Both can use Google Fonts, but this one, since we didn't put any Google Fonts in there, is not calling it, and this one is. So again, these are taking such a small amount that it really doesn't matter that much, but definitely something to keep in mind. And again, I'm not seeing any huge files sticking out at me here, so overall, I would say this one looks slightly slower. It did score 11 points less than the Divi version, but again, these aren't that huge of a deal. Most of the biggest differences in query strings, and then a few more requests on the scripts and CSS. Now let's hop over to Visual Composer, and that one actually gets a 12 for query strings. So even though looking at it here, I guess they got a couple. It looks like they got only 2, but we got hundreds and everything else compared to, we didn't get browser caching on that one. And specify a very accept encoding header, so we didn't get 100 on that one. This one got 100 on everything. Here we got 5 requests for scripts and 2 for CSS, which is lower than the other ones. And here we've got, let's see. Yeah. Okay, so it looks like the script and CSS are pretty balanced on this one compared to the other 2. And then down here, again, I don't see any huge file types or huge file sizes in here, so nothing super bloated in here. We're all talking about a small amount of KBs, and it doesn't look like this one loaded up Google Fonts, so just a tiny percentage of requests saved on there. So overall load time 1 second. Let's see, request 9, performance grade 85. And let's see what the load time was on this one. 9. Okay, so both of these scored better in terms of load time. This one had a bigger page size and more requests, but still loaded faster. This one had the most requests, but still loaded faster than Visual Composer. And Visual Composer had the lowest page size, but also loaded the slowest. So interesting there. Once again, we're looking at this is about 0.3 of so about a third of a second difference in time. That's a pretty small difference overall. So for this one, I think we're pretty much done looking at this. Now again, this is a super basic test. All we did is add this one image. There's obviously a lot more we can do to expand on that and add some more interesting variables into it. So for what we found out for this one, just having the thing installed does not appear to add a ton of bloat to the page at all. It actually loads pretty fast, and it doesn't. There's not a lot of extra scripts being loaded that are taking up a ton of time. I mean, these are all just small amount of KBs we're dealing with here compared to the image. I mean, the image takes more than all these other ones put together times 2 probably. So really not taking up a huge amount there. Yeah, so far I would say, Visual Composer was the clear winner on GT metrics and page speed, but it was a loser on Pingdom. And Divi kind of looked the worst out of the 3 on GT metrics and page speed, and I think it kind of came out the best on this one, but not by much, just on a little bit of load time maybe. So Elementor is pretty squarely in the middle, but really all 3 of these pretty much fared about the same, I would say, for this one. So so far I would say we don't definitively favor any of these 3 builders over the other, just in terms of what we've looked at so far. I think the next thing I'm going to test is we're going to look at adding some animations and text, and I would also like to test video backgrounds because that's popular and those take up a little bit more bulk, so I kind of want to see how those behave once we add those into the page and how much time they're taking up to load. So that should be interesting. So anyway, not a huge amount of insight on this first one other than they don't seem to be performing that bad, generally speaking. The sites load pretty fast when you don't have a bunch of crap on the page, so I think a lot of this extra bloat is really coming from what you're actually doing in the editor, or at least that's what it's pointing to so far. So we will check back with you when we take this text to the next level and see if making some enhancements on these pages actually makes any difference in the long run in terms of how these things perform. So thanks for sticking with me, and be sure to stay tuned because part 2 will be dropping soon. Bye.